everyone, Raelan here. In this video, I have a wonderful and unique interview for you. I've got two people here for you today, two people for the price of one. I'm here with Luke Hansen. He's over in the UK in Bristol, and he is here to talk a bit about his journey with COVID and long COVID, and then his almost full recovery from long COVID. And Pamela is here as well, Pamela Rose. She is a fatigue coach who began working with Luke over this last year. So we just thought it would be a great opportunity to both hear Luke's story and how working with a fatigue coach can help with this whole process, and just overall to shine some light and some hope onto this long COVID situation, because I know there are many people facing it and we need to get these recovery stories out there. So thank you both. Thank you, Luke and Pamela, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
So Luke, can you take us back a little bit?
So prior to what I think was COVID, as I don't have a positive test, I was leading a very full life. I was very active, did a lot of running and cycling and rock climbing. I have two young children, so I was kept busy around the clock. And then in February of 2020, I was away skiing in Chamonix in France, which was known to be a spot that had quite a bit of COVID in it in hindsight. And I think that's where I got COVID. But I didn't have what was being discussed then as the characteristic signs of COVID. In the UK, we were being told that COVID came with a characteristic cough and flu-like symptoms that would last around 2 weeks. Now we know that there's a real myriad of symptoms associated with COVID. The following week, I started to struggle with energy. My joints were very sore. My muscles were sore. I had previously been doing quite a lot of running and competition running. So I used to keep a diary of my training experiences. And the week following being in Chamonix, my diary says things like, everything hurts, everything feels like hard work. But that was the only sign I had at that point. And no one was discussing fatigue and COVID at that time. So as the weeks progressed from there, I continued to struggle for energy. My energy levels were up and down. I was skiing again with my children a couple of weeks later, and each day I came home from skiing and found I really struggled to get back out of the sofa once I'd sat down. And I remember phoning my wife and saying, didn't realise that when you got to around the age of 40 that you wouldn't be able to keep up with your children anymore. But it did seem a bit abnormal. So when I got back, I went to see the GP and started having tests to see whether there was anything that they could diagnose. I had a sort of battery of tests, all came back normal. And at that point, no one was discussing the fact that I might have had COVID. So as things progressed, again, energy was up and down, but I had a week in April where I could really struggled to get out of bed and just potted around the house all day. But at the end of the week, I started to feel a bit better. So I thought maybe I have had a virus and now I'm getting better. But again, it was just up and down, but on a trajectory that gradually took me down and down to a point where I'd have moments where I'd experience complete paralysis, where I'd be sitting or lying and then really unable to get back up again. So it was becoming more and more disturbing, but still there was no explanation for what was going on. And so I remember reading a newspaper article in June 2020, which started to discuss long COVID. And all of a sudden there was this almost eureka moment for me where I was like, this is what I'm experiencing. And there are other people like me. So it was quite reassuring, but still, because it was novel, there was no answer to that question.
Wow, that's a lot. First off, I'm really sorry, Luke, that you've had to go through all of this. So did you receive a COVID diagnosis, or how did you come to the realization that it was COVID that had brought this on?
Well, when I think I had COVID, there was no testing for COVID. It was that early on. When I feel I got COVID, no one in the UK had been diagnosed with COVID at that point. And so I didn't have that, and I had an antibody test in August, but obviously that was quite some time after I think I'd had the virus, and that came back below the threshold. So I will never know whether I definitely had COVID or not.
Right. Seems to be a lot of people in your situation where testing wasn't available, or we know that also testing is far from 100% reliable.
Yeah.
Many people who very clearly have it, but the tests are coming back negative. So, I only ask, just because I know other people will be wondering the same. So just to help raise awareness around the fact that not everyone who we strongly suspect had COVID, has some sort of paper documentation for that. But it doesn't make it any less real of an experience. What were you thinking through all of this? Were you seeing doctors? What were they telling you to do? How did things progress from there?
So for our sort of general practitioner service we have in the UK, I got very little help once all my blood tests had come back as normal. The illness was making me anxious and depressed at times and raising my stress levels. But I realised I also did have quite a lot of underlying stress and anxiety anyway before the illness, which I hadn't really been aware of until being brought to my knees really by COVID. So I started having psychological therapy to deal with my stress and anxiety, which was very helpful, exposed a lot of things to me and helped me come to terms with the illness, but didn't help my energy to return, unfortunately.
And what about the people around you, your family, your friends, people at work? Were you communicating a lot of this to them? Your family, I'm sure there was no hiding it, but what did they think about what was going on? How did they handle it?
So in the UK, we were in a national lockdown, so we weren't mixing outside of the family. So it was just my family who were dealing with it. I think my children are hard to read and are very resilient. But I think it did have quite an effect, particularly on my elder child, my son. His behaviour deteriorated as my health deteriorated, unfortunately. My wife is a psychologist and was a person who gave me my psychological help during that period. So she was very supportive, but I think it was probably very stressful for her and difficult for her to be around someone who had such unexplainable symptoms, which rendered me fairly useless a lot of the time.
And what were you thinking through all of this?
It was very frightening, really, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether I'd ever get any better. Life had become very, very difficult, and you never knew what the next day would hold.
Yeah, I imagine most of us find it's quite a bit a shock. It's a lot from your life is stripped away quite quickly. Things that you enjoy, things that you attach to your identity, things that you do for stress relief, if it's sports or exercise. And
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to accept in a very short period of time. Mm-hmm. So eventually you connected with Pamela. And Pamela, I apologize. I think I forgot in the introduction. I said where Luke is, but I don't think I mentioned where you are. So first, maybe Pamela, can you just tell us, where you're from, and where you are in the world? Because I know they're not the same thing right now.
No, they're not. So home is Bristol, UK, near where Luke lives. Although of course we didn't meet in person, did we, Luke? Because of lockdown. Not while I was helping him anyway. But right now I'm in Spain. So yeah, I'm in the Murcia region of Spain. So we're a truly international bunch tonight.
So at some point, Pamela, I guess you heard from Luke. He reached out to you, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so I'd been a fatigue coach for a while. I'd built my reputation and experience on helping people with conditions such as ME, CFS, fibromyalgia, and yeah, around the time that Luke's talking about, sort of July, August last year, I was hearing about long COVID. I was realizing that people were starting to really struggle with this post-viral fatigue, and I started to do what I could to try to get some help out there and what have you. And Luke, I think you found me because your natural sort of restless curiosity to try to find people to help. And I can remember one of the first conversations that we had, and one thing Luke hasn't shared is that you're very athletic. You you're a very fit and active person, weren't you, before your fatigue hit? And I can remember Luke saying to me, I've had a coach before to help me with my athletic performance. Maybe I need a coach to help me manage, this current situation, this current challenge.
Okay, so that was from your end of it, Pamela. So, Luke, for you, what prompted you to reach out to Pamela, and how did you find her?
Yeah, so I knew there must be some people out there that have some experience of these things and would be able to help me. And so it was obviously going into the ME/CFS community to find that help. And so I, through internet searching, came across Pamela. I liked the fact that she was local. I liked the things I read from her website and felt, because she had experienced these similar symptoms in the past, and then she would be able to relate to me better. That was the thing I found very difficult. I felt quite alone in that people could not understand the things I was going through, understand the symptoms, because I think until you've had a fatigue-like illness, just being very tired doesn't come close. Pamela mentions that I've done quite a lot of running in the past, and I say to people, I've run ultra marathons, and then being perfectly capable to function afterwards. Whereas with this illness, I would have a night's sleep and then not be able to function afterwards, and get out of bed and do basic things. So it was important to me that Pamela had experience of fatigue illness. I spoke to her first in August when I was looking for help around pacing, because I'd come across this word and I'd read about it, and I felt I understood it but wanted to learn more. And we spoke, and then slightly naively I thought, well, actually, I think I could probably get on with this on my own. So I then spent a month trying to do pacing, and failed miserably. So I'd feel like I had it under control, and then I'd get hit with a bout of post-exertional malaise, and then try again and get hit with another bout of post-exertional malaise. And I felt like I was refining the process a bit, but by the end of August I actually made myself a lot more ill, I think. And I'd actually been on holiday for 2 weeks, and so you would have thought I'd be very well rested. But having returned from holiday, I had 4 days in bed, really unable to do anything, which resulted in me becoming very stressed, very anxious, and having a huge panic attack, and was attended by an ambulance and paramedics. Following that, I realised I really didn't have it under control at all, and so went back to Pamela for some assistance.
I'm always curious for people who are facing long COVID, because it seems like many people who are our communities are, chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, we're combining. So I imagine that it's just a process of Googling symptoms, finding things online. You start to connect these dots that, okay, these two things might be somewhat similar. Had you heard of ME or CFS before? And what did you think about, being connected with this?
Yeah, so I had heard of it before, and embarrassingly, probably hadn't taken it very seriously. I'd felt it was probably a psychological illness, and that it was something I didn't really understand, but was probably can't think of the right word, a bit dismissive of. So, but then once experiencing these symptoms and seeing the similarities, and realizing how completely out of control my mind and body had become, it seemed like a logical place to go looking for answers.
So, Pamela, Luke reached out to you, and what happened from there? Or when people contact you to work with you for these sorts of conditions, what does that look like?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say, of course, is that everybody's different. And although there are similarities that I see, amongst everybody that I help, I treat each person as an individual. And it depends where they are in their journey and what particularly they need my help most with. Luke's already mentioned that he very much he'd heard about pacing. He wanted to pace. There's so much talk out there about how important pacing is, but there's really not much about how to do it, is there? And I think that we worked a lot at the beginning about me guiding Luke into a place where he understood that it's more than just a concept. And, this is how I help many people. It's more than just a concept. You actually, there are some structures, some techniques, some frameworks that you can and should apply to identify your baseline, get familiar with how much energy you've got at the moment, and then work through how you're going to use it. Yeah, so we worked a lot on pacing, a lot on resting, the right kinds of rest. And, I truly believe that one of the most important things is to get into a place where you're doing enough proactive rest that you start to move away from that real need where you have to rest. And I remember we talked quite a bit about that. But I think the other key thing that I work really closely with people on, and this happened with us as well, I think, Luke, is about that acceptance piece. It's about actually finally understanding that it's real, it's happening, and that you need to start living your life differently. And start to kind of slow down, learn how to, what are the smart things you need to do, put them in place, and then gradually start to build yourself back up again. And that acceptance piece sounds really easy, but it can be really difficult for people to achieve.
Oh, it's tough. Even just the acceptance piece alone, I think it's a really hard one for most of us to internalize. And I love that you brought up about the pacing, because I also suspect for many of us, I know this was me for a long time, but pacing I just thought was like willpower and a lot of guesswork. Like, just don't overdo it and just have some self-control. But it really is a recipe for disaster, because you just have no idea how much is too much. And so it can be very helpful and empowering to know that there are actual tools and strategies that you can use to do this. It doesn't have to be so abstract. And so it's nice to know that there are concrete ways to tackle these things.
And, pacing has a knock-on effect to so many other things as well. If you crack pacing, you're calming your body as well. Your autonomic nervous system can start to kind of balance, because you're not pushing and booming and busting. It really is at the core of so much.
All right. So, Luke, from your end, what was your experience of all this with recovery? I'm so happy to hear that you've got to this place where you are now, which is almost back to normal. So what were the biggest things from your experience that you found that helped you to get here?
Well, I feel that I really needed to deal with my underlying stresses and anxieties to be able to get to a place where I could let my body heal. So that was an important step. Step 2 was really then understanding pacing, and like we've been discussing, having a structure to it, and understanding that rest really means rest rather than reading a book or watching television. But Pamela describes it as empty mind time, or empty mind space. And so really resting properly and building that into your day, having structured rest. And then you can really understand where those baselines are and what you're capable of doing. So once I had that under control, after a period, I was able to then start doing more. And that process happened quite quickly. I think then that I was able to start adding to my day. And I got to a point, having really understood pacing properly by September, early September of 2020. By the end of October, early November, I was able to do light exercise again, so short bicycle rides. So that was a really nice step for me to be able to get some of my old life back. And then probably later November, I felt that I needed to take another step, which was to start saying that, well, maybe I don't need to pace so in such a controlled way. Maybe I don't need to be so fearful of post-exertional malaise or the other symptoms I had been experiencing, and start to challenge that. So I started to do that and do more exercise. I think probably by February 21, I would say that I'd got to a point where I could function and exercise at a level that I was very happy with. So I kind of feel like recovery was achieved by that stage, but I feel like there's still shadows of the illness around me. So I still do get tired unexpectedly. And I think there's probably certain triggers that bring that fatigue and other symptoms along, which I still experience.
So this is a lot to go through. It sounds like you've had to change the way you think, the way you live your life, a whole bunch of things. I always like to hear from people from your perspective, has this whole process changed you? And if so, how?
Well, definitely, it changed me drastically. I think I was a person before that was, like a lot of people in our societies now, that was just constantly treading water, that I felt like I needed to be physically or mentally active the whole time. And so, we were discussing earlier, that autonomic nervous system. I don't think I was ever able to get into a state where I could rest and recover and be calm. And so my body was always fighting, I think. So I think COVID's allowed me to live in a far more peaceful existence now, where I understand my mind and I understand my body a lot better, and I can give it what it needs to be more healthy.
So I'd love to ask both of you. I know there are a scary number of people out there who are facing long COVID. So Luke, maybe I'll start with you. So for people who are still in this, what message would you have for them, or insights, or what advice would you give yourself if you could go back to when this first all started?
Yeah, I think people are, should be in a much better situation than I was, in that there is a lot more information out there. But maybe there is now possibly a bit too much information out there. So I think people need to be careful how much they read, how much time they spend in various long COVID forums and things like that. And they need to come up with a plan for recovery and then work to it. And if it doesn't work, then change the plan. So be very open-minded and explore different avenues for that. If something's not working, then change it. I think it's also really, like, pacing is absolutely vital when you've got a fatigue type illness, to find a baseline that's sustainable and to then learn to enjoy the life that you have within the confines of the illness. So I think it's a vital step. What else was I say? So probably finally, once you've got pacing dialed in, then you need to let your body repair and recover. But then you do need to move back to a normal life at some point. And it doesn't have to look like your life did before, but it needs to be back integrated with normal society, where we've got children to look after or a job to go to. So we need to get to a point where we can start challenging those symptoms and in a careful way. But I think pacing is a great lesson for all of us, whether we have a fatigue type illness or not, in that it's about listening to your body and knowing when to rest and what to give it.
Sounds like a lot of this for you, which was similar for me, is, it was about finding that balance and, resting and taking care of yourself, but also slowly, very gradually within your limits, continuing to push yourself so that you are always making progress and you are slowly, getting back or getting to where you want to go, but doing that in a very controlled way. What about you, Pamela? What would you say from your experience? I know that you have your own experience. You've lived with ME and fully recovered, and then now you work with many people with ME, CFS, long COVID. So for people with long COVID specifically, from all of your experiences, what would you say to them, or what insight or advice would you have?
So, the first thing I want to say is please, anybody who's watching this, who is going through, a health challenge, long COVID, post-COVID fatigue, please find that hope, be hopeful. And I think there is a lot to be hopeful about. Luke is only one of the people that I've helped. I've got many success stories, people who might still be on their journeys, but they're doing good. They're doing okay. And it is possible to find a way to kind of to cope better with your symptoms and with your health challenges now, and then gradually start to move towards those improvements you want. So I actually, I reached out to a group of people that I've helped who have got long COVID, and asked them what they would say were the things that helped them most, because I thought it would be really great to share that rather than just my own view. Although, of course, what they said absolutely resonates. I love that Luke said the importance of having a plan. And it always surprises me when people come to me for help and I'll say, so, what's your plan? Have you got a plan? And they haven't. And this, as I call them, fatigue rescue mission, is one of the biggest things you'll probably have to deliver in your life. And big missions need a plan, and it needs something that you can track and, keep you straight and what have you. And the kind of things in that plan need to be, find a way of finding that acceptance. If you don't like the word acceptance, and many people don't, then call it something else. Think of it about sort of, finding peace with, or understanding, or coming to terms with. It doesn't have to be the A word, but at least stop pushing, stop denying it, find a way to accept it, and then hopefully you can start doing smart things. The diet came out quite strongly. I think a lot of people find making some alterations to their diet is helpful. Now, I'm not an expert nutritionist, but certainly I guide people through some of the basic nutrition angles. Gut health, trying to boost your immune system, trying to get your body into a state where it can make and use energy as efficiently as possible from the food you're giving it. Can be hugely helpful for people. Pacing came out loud and clear, as we've heard a lot here. Finding your baseline, recognizing when you need to stop, recognizing that maybe pushing through and trying to keep doing everything is just not helpful at the moment, and then finding the best way to identify your baseline and use that available energy in the smartest possible way every day. Lots of rest. Empty brain rest, as Luke mentions earlier, that's a term that anybody who's worked with me will be familiar with. But it's really just about resting completely. Just shut off, don't have any external stimulation, and try and do that at least a few times a day. Give your brain quiet time as well as your body, because as I think we would all agree, it's not just physical overexertion that can trigger symptoms. It can very much be, cognitive overuse as well. And finally, all of the pieces that we've touched on here about, finding the right ways for you to calm your system, to quieten that stress response, whether it be meditation, breathing exercises, listening to calming music, whatever works for you. There are lots of different things out there that you can do. You've shared lots of them yourself, Raelan, but it's so important to find that calmer place, give your nervous system a chance to just get that balance back a bit more. So those are the key things. But as I said, everybody's unique and has to find their own plan. I'd just like to say that, although Luke came to me for help, Luke is the person who delivered his fatigue rescue. That's the case with all of us. We are at the center of our own success stories, and all credit to Luke. He took it seriously. He left no stone unturned. He always had a new book to tell me about that he was reading, or a new, somebody new that he'd read about. And, he really, really was determined to get through this. And, I think that's a really important message too. I've written blogs about this myself in the past, that you can't outsource your recovery to other people. You have to deliver it yourself.
Yeah. Well done, Luke. You've clearly worked very hard in all of this. This is amazing. Pamela, you are such a wealth of information. I'm so grateful. Thank you for sharing all of that. I'm just grateful in general that you exist in the world, because there are so many people struggling who need this kind of support. And I just, you and I have known each other for quite some time now, and I'm more and more impressed with you the longer I know you. You're just genuinely a good person. You genuinely want to help. And I've talked to many people who have worked with you, and they're so grateful for the support and for taking part in your programs and your coaching, and have made great progress. So I really just can't say enough good things about the work that Pamela does. Links for all of her information will of course be in the video description. And I would really encourage anyone who is currently struggling with a chronic health condition like long COVID or any of the others we've mentioned to consider reaching out, because I think far too many of us try and do this alone and without a plan, which can be a scary, hopeless place to be. So yeah, thank you for all the work that you do, Pamela, with people.
Oh, thank you, Raelan. That's really sweet. And I love what I do, and I hope that comes across. But while we're doing the mutual loving, I think, as I say, everybody, you're doing the great work too. And I think that's why Luke and I wanted to talk to you, because we really want to get that hope out there, don't we, Luke? And really, show people that there are things they can do, even though your medical practitioner may not be able to give you much direction. There are things you can do.
So Luke, for you, perhaps I'll start. Thank you for sharing all of this. If people wanted to get in touch or ask you more questions, would it be best for them to leave some comments in the video description, or is there another way? What works best for you?
Yeah, comments in the video description would be a great idea. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then Pamela, how about for yourself? For people wanting to get in touch or learn more, how would they do that besides looking at all the links in the video description?
Okay, well, that's probably a good place to start. I'm on all the socials. My website is pamelarose.co.uk, or you can find me on Instagram or on at My Life Rescue. Or comment here, and I would love to see people's comments, and promise I shall reply to all of them.
All right. So, and for people watching, if I've got lots of other interviews like this, some specifically about long COVID, some about ME/CFS. So I will link some up on the screen here if you want to check out some more really inspiring and moving stories. And as always, look forward to your comments in the video description. So thanks again to both of you. Thank you to everyone who's watching. And that's it for today. I'll see you in the next video.